Hey, you know, I don't mean to scare people, but I was reading in the news that the last couple of days they've had about 20 little shocks in Yellowstone.
Oh, no.
Yellowstone is the largest volcano in the world,
Yes.
active volcano in the world. And if it blows, it will cover the entire United States with ash and destroy.
Well, just when activity shows like that, something's happening somewhere else as that progresses.
But that is, you know,
That's big.
I worked there. We used to swim in geysers. I mean, they're underneath the Lake Yellowstone, there are all sorts of things. But in any event, that's something to be in prayer about. And today on this program, we're going to show whether an 84-year-old is capable of doing Olympic moves on a horse.
A big horse.
Great big horse.
A great big horse.
Okay.
I'm looking forward
that'll
to
be
that.
fun. Eufano, there he is.
Beautiful
that
horse.
magnificent animal. Okay, well, isn't he a beautiful thing?
He really is.
Well, I think it'll be fun. Okay, well, in the news, pro-Russian rebels have captured more government bases in eastern Ukraine. In response, President Obama is warning that Russia will be isolated by the West.
Well, Europe may not be completely on board with that strategy. France just invited Russia to D-Day ceremonies Friday. Ephraim Graham has the story.
President Obama says the U.S. is providing Ukraine with $5 million worth of body armor, night vision goggles, and communication equipment as the country's battle against pro-Russia separatists continues. The president announced the aid after meeting with Petro Poroshenko, the country's newly elected president, in Warsaw, Poland, Wednesday.
We will not accept Russia's occupation of Crimea or its violation of Ukraine's sovereignty. Our free nations will stand united so that further Russian provocations will only mean more isolation and cost for Russia.
The fighting in parts of eastern Ukraine is escalating, and that unrest is testing Ukraine's new government. Pro-Russia separatists just took over 2 government bases near the city of Luhansk, seizing ammunition and explosives. In the face of international condemnation, Russian President Vladimir Putin denies any Russian military involvement in eastern Ukraine.
They are lying. There is no military personnel, not even trainers of the Russian army in the east or south of Ukraine, and there have never been.
The world's leading industrialized nations are set to meet without Russia for the first time in 17 years. Russia was supposed to host the 2-day summit, but was kicked out because of its seizure of Crimea. But France still invited Russia to the 70th anniversary of D-Day events in Normandy this Friday, which sends mixed signals about Europe's stance, and President Obama will likely run into Putin at those events. Despite his attempts to sound strong on Ukraine, many Americans disapprove of President Obama's handling of foreign policy, with some saying he is less capable than former Presidents Bill Clinton or George W. Bush. According to a Fox News poll, 68% say the Obama administration is less competent than Clinton's administration. 48% say it is less competent than Bush's, compared to 42% who say it is more competent. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Can you imagine making a speech and saying we're not going to stand for the occupation of Crimea? Crimea has already been lost. They've already given it up. What are they going to do? Going to start a war? Who's he kidding? I mean, that may get the troops to cheer at a rally, but, you know, it's not based on reality. Oh, I get a little upset about that. Well, this Army staff sergeant that's been in the news, they had a party in his hometown scheduled for him. And it's just the latest thing because that party has been canceled.
That's right, Pat. Growing fallout from the Taliban prisoner swap for Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. Angry lawmakers are now threatening impeachment if the president releases any more prisoners from Guantanamo Bay without congressional approval. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham sounded that warning. Lawmakers are worried the president may try to shut down the prison camp despite strong congressional opposition. Graham and a bipartisan group of senators met on Capitol Hill late last night for a closed-door briefing on the growing controversy.
I believe the decision to release these prisoners put our country in jeopardy.
These are all high-level people. These are people that basically have the ability to go back and hit the ground running. So we're concerned about that.
Meanwhile, as Pat mentioned, there will be no hero's welcome for Bergdahl when he leaves Germany for his Idaho hometown. Celebrations have been canceled because of security concerns and the nationwide debate over his service. Those who served alongside him have called him a deserter. Well, a free speech victory for a Christian student in Virginia. Christian Parks attends Thomas Nelson Community College. He sued the college system in March after campus police ordered him to stop preaching in a school courtyard. The Alliance Defending Freedom represented Parks. They argued his free speech rights were violated. The Virginia Community College system has agreed to pay Parks $25,000 and voted to eliminate free speech zones, which confine students' expression to designated areas. Parks' attorney says the case has resulted in greater freedom of expression for students. Well, it's still 2 years away, but Democrats and Republicans are already shopping for a city to host their 2016 conventions. Republicans have narrowed down the field. And as Jennifer Wishon found out, 4 cities have the upper hand.
Glossy proposals,
slick,
high stakes, and a potential jackpot for the chosen city. An estimated $150 million will be spent by the 50,000 delegates, party activists, and media in attendance. On the list, Cleveland, Denver, Kansas City, and Dallas. Dallas, after all, belongs to the reddest of red states.
I think the brand of Dallas fits very well with the Republican brand. You know, Dallas is all about free market capitalism, low taxes, low regulation, and I think that's a message that I think resonates with the public.
Texas means big. From trucks to skylines to the biggest drawing card of them all, money. That carries extra pull now that Congress has cut the $18 million it typically hands out to each party convention. The host city will need to raise $60, even $70 million. And Dallas can guarantee a big chunk of that up front.
In Texas, we have something called the Major Events Trust Fund, and that's a portion of the taxes generated by an event such as the Republican National Convention can actually go back to the organization hosting the event and used to pay for things such as security, transportation.
Kansas City is promoting its GPS coordinates in the heart of America with the slogan, "All roads lead to here." Denver is pointing out America the Beautiful was written in Colorado. And Cleveland, well, it's located in one of the most sought-after states in presidential politics. The chosen city will get a giant economic shot in the arm, but with the world watching, there's also a risk. Todd Gilman is Washington bureau chief for the Dallas Morning News.
If everything goes smoothly, that's one thing. But if you have a lot of protests, if you have a lot of traffic snarls, and there are always traffic problems, there are always security concerns.
But when it comes to the possibility of a 2016 Republican National Convention being held here in Dallas, Texas, the chances are, well, still pretty big.
We want this very bad because Dallas last hosted the Republican National Convention in 1984 when Ronald Reagan went on to win. And we want to remind folks that, you know, one of the last winners for the Republican Party came out of Dallas.
Symbolism that may resonate with the Republican Party desperate to win back the White House. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Dallas.
Thanks, Jennifer. Well, turning overseas now, the woman sentenced to death in Sudan for refusing to recant her Christian faith has appealed the verdict. Miriam Ibrahim's attorney says they're demanding her release based on court errors. Ibrahim was sentenced to death last month on charges of apostasy for allegedly converting to Christianity from Islam. Sudan's foreign minister says he hopes his country's justice system will soon find a solution. Ibrahim is married to a Christian U.S. citizen, and she just gave birth to their second child in prison. Pat, I can't imagine what this lady is going through.
Where are people around the nation? Where's the protest from the quote left? What is the matter with this? I mean, here is some woman who is married to a Christian who used to be a Muslim, who says now I'm freely accepting a new faith, and they want to put her to death in the Sudan. Where is the ACLU? Where are all of these bleeding heart liberals who are at the, protest rallies to proclaim a woman's right to have an abortion? Where are these people when somebody like this is being threatened by Islam? The reason is political correctness does not allow us to talk about this horrible, oppressive system and what it's doing to women. But we will talk about it, and I think you need to talk everywhere you can about it and hope and pray that woman gets set free from this iniquitous ruling. Wendy.
Well, Pat, speaking of oppression to women, Thailand is home to the world's largest sex industry. Each year, tourists from around the world travel there, supporting a sex trade that enslaves countless women and girls. But one Christian ministry in the heart of Bangkok is helping young prostitutes and tourists find freedom. Lucille Toulousan has that story.
At age 14, Mint quit school because her family did not have the money to support her studies. So she left her rural home to work in Bangkok.
I was enticed to go into prostitution because I needed the money. But one time, someone smothered my face with a pillow and tried to rape me. At that moment, I remembered someone told me I can pray to God. And so I cried to God to help me, and I survived that night.
A few months later, a Christian introduced her to Nightlight Ministry.
I experienced God's love when I came to Nightlight. We get to read the Bible and worship. He gave me a new life, and now I want to serve Him.
Nightlight rescues women and children trapped in the sex trade industry. It also trains women to support themselves by silk screen and jewelry making. Nightlight founder Annie Disselberg says prostitution and human trafficking have increased rapidly in Thailand since the ministry started in 2005. Last year, Nightlight assisted 26 trafficked women, mostly from Uganda, to go home.
We know that God's heart is out there with these women. He longs for them to know that there is a way out.
Annie is grateful that CBN's Orphans Promise provided funds to remodel the Nightlight Outreach Center.
As you can see, the location is very strategic because it is right in the middle of two bars. And through this, the Nightlight Ministry, together with Orphans Promise, will be able to reach out to more women in prostitution and even the male sex tourists.
Men and women can come in off the street to get a good cup of coffee, and there will be people available who are willing to listen to their stories, to begin to build relationships with them. And out of those relationships, then we earn the right to speak into them, to give them hope.
The center is also used for prayer and worship, Christian parties, and medical clinics. A transformed Mint also helps in the outreach programs.
God has given me a burden for the women in the streets. I invite them to our parties where there's free food and I paint their nails. I share Christ with them to give them hope in their lives.
Together, Nightlight and Orphans Promise are giving more and more women like Mint a better opportunity for a new life. Lucille Toulousan, CBN News, Bangkok.
And that's fantastic. Orphans Promise on the scene there in Bangkok. Terry, that's fantastic.
Well, thanks, Wendy. You know, it's a great opportunity, Pat. I know this is heavy on your heart.
Oh, it is indeed.
And what I love about that work that Annie's doing is she's right there in the heart of it. And, you know, when we talk about real estate, we say it's location, location, location. But in the sex trade industry, it's relationship, relationship, relationship. She's there for the long haul, and she's making a difference in these lives.
Some years ago, we had a studio in Chiang Mai, up country a little bit from Bangkok, and I went from there to an orphanage that we were sponsoring from CBN, and I met a 17-year-old girl who had fled her village in the northern part of Thailand because the parents were going to sell her. They could sell a girl for either a color television set or a refrigerator. Yeah. And the pimps would come up from Bangkok, and they'd buy these girls, and they'd be in slavery. So she fled, and she was very, very happy. But you're seeing girls rescued that way all the time.
We are. It's a long process when someone has been involved in that for a while. Gaining their trust and offering them hope in the future takes a little bit of time, but it's well worth it.
Well, folks, Orphans Promise, something else that we're doing here at CBN, and Terry has You've got how many girls? I keep asking you about how many orphans. Do you have any idea?
Well, it's thousands. You know, we don't have a number count
Okay.
because it changes on a regular basis, but we really can make a difference. And it happens one life at a time, but it's making a difference in communities and nations,
When you
really.
support CBN, you can support Orphans Promise as well.
Boko Haram militants have killed more than 200 people in northeastern Nigeria. Community leaders say they knew an attack was coming and pleaded with the military to send soldiers, but no one came to defend them. The radical Islamic Boko Haram has been seizing villages and large swaths of territory in the northeast. The terrorist group is affiliated with al-Qaeda, and it wants to create an Islamic state in Nigeria. Well, tomorrow, Americans and the international community will commemorate the 70th anniversary of D-Day. This will be the last major event for many D-Day survivors. The World War II generation is steadily passing from the scene. Well, yesterday, the last of the original Navajo code talkers died. Chester Nez was 93 years old. He was only in 10th grade when he enlisted, but Nez and fellow Navajos created the code system the Japanese military could not crack. Nez was proud of their secret code, and he said it was, quote, one of the greatest parts of history. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.